It is September 1918. The First World War is in its final months. On a battlefield near the French village of Marcoing, a British soldier named Henry Tandey is fighting for his life. He has already won the Military Medal and the Distinguished Conduct Medal. In just a few hours, he will earn the Victoria Cross, the highest award for gallantry in the British Empire. He is one of the most decorated soldiers of the entire war. And then, according to one of the most famous urban legends of the 20th century, he did something extraordinary. He spared a wounded German soldier. That soldier, the story goes, was a 29-year-old corporal named Adolf Hitler. 20 years later, Hitler would remember this act of mercy. He would show a painting of Tandey to British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and say, "That man came so near to killing me that I thought I should never see Germany again." Story is irresistible. One soldier, one moment of compassion, and the entire course of history could have changed. If Tandey had pulled the trigger, would World War II have been prevented? Would 60 million people have lived? This is the story of Henry Tandey, the most decorated private soldier of the First World War, the man who allegedly spared Hitler, and the truth about what really happened. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will understand why historians have concluded that this famous moment almost certainly never occurred. Henry James Tandey was born in Leamington Spa in 1891. He had a difficult childhood, spent time in an orphanage, and worked as a boiler attendant before enlisting in the British Army in 1910. When war broke out in 1914, he was sent to France. He fought at the First Battle of Ypres in October 1914, and at the Somme in 1916, where he was wounded in the leg. He was wounded again at Passchendaele in 1917, but his greatest heroism came in the final months of the war. In August 1918, during the Second Battle of Cambrai, Tandey led a bombing party across open ground under heavy fire, captured a German trench, and returned with 20 prisoners. For this, he was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Days later, he rescued wounded men under fire and led another attack into German trenches, earning the Military Medal. It was on September 28, 1918, that Tandey performed the act that would define his military career. His platoon was stopped by machine gun fire. He crawled forward, located the gun position, and with a Lewis gun team destroyed it. At the canal crossing, he repaired a plank bridge under a hail of bullets. Later, surrounded by overwhelming numbers, he led a bayonet charge so fierce that 37 Germans were captured. He was wounded twice, but refused to leave until the fight was won. For this, he was awarded the Victoria Cross. This is the man who became known as the most decorated private soldier of the First World War, a genuine hero. And yet today, he is remembered not for his chest full of medals but for something else. The story of how he spared a wounded German soldier, the man who allegedly became Adolf Hitler. The story begins not in 1918, but in 1923. Tandey's regiment commissioned a painting from Italian artist Fortunino Mantegna. It depicted a scene from the 1914 Battle of Ypres, showing a soldier carrying a wounded comrade. The soldier was modeled on Henry Tandey. The painting, titled The Men in Crossroads, became famous. A copy was made, and somehow it made its way to Germany. In 1937, a copy of the painting was given to a member of Hitler's staff, Dr. Otto Schwend. Schwend, who had been a medical officer during the war, had been sent the painting by a British officer he had treated and befriended in 1914. Schwend, in turn, gave a large photograph of the painting to Hitler, claimed to recognize the soldier in the painting. He identified him as the man who had spared his life back in September 1918. Here is the first major problem with the story. The painting depicts a battle from 1914. Hitler claimed he met Tandey in 1918. The dates don't match. In September 1938, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain visited Hitler in a desperate attempt to avoid war. At Hitler's Bavarian retreat, the Berghof, Chamberlain noticed the painting on the wall. Hitler pointed to it and said, "That man came so near to killing me that I thought I should never see Germany again." He told Chamberlain that the soldier had aimed his rifle at him, but had chosen not to shoot. Hitler asked Chamberlain to convey his best wishes and gratitude to the man. Chamberlain returned to Britain and, according to the legend, called Tandey. Tandey was out, and his nephew took the message. But historians have found two major problems with this part of the story. First, Chamberlain's diaries and letters make no mention of Tandey. Second, Tandey did not have a telephone at that time. Himself was non-committal. In 1939, he told a newspaper, "According to them, I've met Adolf Hitler. Maybe they're right, but I can't remember him." A year later, after Coventry had been devastated by German bombs, Tandey reportedly told a journalist, "If only I had known what he would turn out to be, I'm sorry to God I let him go." Here is the key question. Was the story true? Was Hitler actually there? Tandey's biographer, historian David Johnson, has spent years investigating the claim. The evidence, he says, is overwhelming. The two men could not have crossed paths. The German military records show that Hitler was on leave from September 10 to September 27, 1918. He was not in the trenches. He was back in Germany. The incident allegedly happened on September 28. But Hitler was either on his way back to the front or still in Germany on that day. Second, even if Hitler had returned to the front, he was in the wrong place. On September 17, Hitler's unit had been moved about 50 miles north of Marcoing, where Tandey was fighting. There is no way the two men could have met. Third, Tandey himself, during the battle for which he earned the Victoria Cross, would have been extremely disheveled and covered in mud and blood. He would not have looked like the clean, composed soldier in the painting. Hitler could not have recognized him from a painting that depicted a different battle from 4 years earlier. So why did Hitler tell this story? Historians believe it was deliberate propaganda. Hitler wanted to create a myth that he had been spared for a greater purpose, that he was chosen by Providence to restore Germany to greatness. With his godlike self-perception, Johnson wrote, the story added to his own myth that he had been spared for something greater, that he was somehow chosen. By naming Tandey, one of the most decorated soldiers of the war, Hitler made the story sound more dramatic. It wasn't just any Tommy who spared him. It was a British hero. Story also reveals something about how we remember history. It is simple. It is dramatic. It is satisfying to think that one man's decision, one moment of compassion, could have prevented 60 million deaths. That is why it has persisted for nearly a century, despite all the evidence against it. It is a perfect legend, but the truth is less glamorous. Hitler was not in Marcoing that day. There is no reliable evidence that he met Tandey. Tandey, the actual historical figure, was a hero in his own right. He was one of the most courageous soldiers of the war. He saved lives, captured prisoners, and fought with extraordinary bravery. He should be remembered for that, not for a story he himself could not confirm. Henry Tandey died in 1977. He carried this story with him for decades. He never sought fame from it. He never profited from it. He simply lived with a legend that historians have now all but debunked. He was one of the greatest soldiers of the First World War. And he was also the man who, according to Hitler, almost changed the world. Whether you believe that part of the story or not, the lesson is clear. History is rarely as simple as it appears. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones that are not quite true. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And let us know in the comments, do you believe the story, or is it just a myth?